welcome to this Future of Product webinar series. We have a bunch of different webinars for over this Future of Product topic. And today we are talking about more tools related, how we could utilize Atlassian tools for this Future of Product development. We have already a couple of webinars hold, so you can of course see those as well. If you register this webinar series later on, you can find the link from Eficode website. So go there and register if you haven't registered earlier already to this webinar series. So today we're talking about these Atlassian tools and how you get actually full value out of the Atlassian tools when doing product organization or product development. And we are mainly focusing now really like a product development topic, or how do you say, product development view, not like IT or ITSM. It's like product development. So how we are creating those products or services with this tool stack. Agenda, briefly, we are going through the common challenges in product development. So how we see those and what we have discovered from different projects that we have done. And then of course, demonstrating the basic setup, how to utilize these Atlassian tools, Confluence, Jira, to actually define the requirements, develop the requirements, and see that the actual outcome is something that you really like. And of course, we have some time for QA session as well, end of the webinar. And anytime if you have some questions, please put those in our QA. So there we can find those questions and we can answer those after the webinar, or I mean, end of the webinar. So put them, the questions there, that we can find them. And we are trying to, or we will end this before 3 o'clock. And hopefully we have enough time to answer your questions as well. If not, of course, we will answer those later on, like private messages or send recording. You get the recordings and the answers through email, something like that. Let's figure out how that goes if we don't have enough time. And today's speakers, it's me, Timo Leppä. I'm the lead consultant and agile coach in Eficode. I have experience from almost 20 years already. So doing this kind of agile coaching and or changing the organization transformation project, but also long experience with agile, the Atlassian tool sets, so Jira and Confluence. So I have done lots of those trainings, consulting, and trying to figure out always the customer's need. So not just configuring the tool itself, but trying to understand the customer problem and then adjust the tool based on that. But that really briefly me and my colleague.
Yep, my name is Panu, as you can see on the slide, and my background is pretty much the same as Timo's. I've been doing this for 15-20 years, and yeah, around tooling / agile coaching is my area of expertise.
Yeah, and like mentioned, we are now focusing mainly the tool part here, but as we see with Panu that quite often these are really related to methodologies as well, or the practices, how you are doing this. And because we have the background, and we have done also like a scaling agile, so we know that part as well. And it's quite important to understand this when deploying new tool. So hopefully you get some good ideas and thoughts through this webinar as well. So common challenges in product development, how we see those. The typical product development goes something like this, that we have those ideas and we need to record the ideas somewhere, that we know what we want to build. They can call business requirement, initiatives, epics, whatever, but something that some new function, some new products that we would like to develop. So we need to record those somewhere. Then we are designing those, building those, and testing that everything is working well. There is enough features that we can publish them. Then we have the launch. We launch the actual solution to the customers. And of course, the promoting and marketing is something as well. And finally, of course, we are trying to figure out, did we get some benefits out from our idea, what we were thinking very beginning. That is the overall idea, and when it's already in the market, did we get some kind of benefit and ROI out of the actual idea? So this is like a typical and high level process, how it goes. And then how we are managing this process, we have of course different kind of views, but we have kind of simplified this portfolio point of view, that we have these kind of different portfolios, like opportunity portfolio, that we are actually trying to look those, what we are building. Then we have the development portfolio, where we are managing the actual things that we are building currently. So this is something that the actual R&D teams are really focusing on all the time. And of course, the offering portfolio in generally, where the actual money is coming from. So those are the actual products or services, what we have already. Do we need to create new features on those? What is the basic life cycle of those products and so on? But today we are really focusing this development portfolio over here, because we see that otherwise it's too large topic, so we need to focus somewhere, and now we are focusing this development portfolio. Do you have, Panu, anything to add over here in this phase?
No, let's go ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Good. So here are some typical pain points, what we have seen or thought that could be. We have tried to highlight some of those, what we see that are important.
Yeah, for example, quite a typical problem that comes around is that companies can see that it's difficult to get an overview of what we are actually developing and what we are working on, and what's the progress on those. And this is quite a typical problem in a way that which concerns both the tooling and also the way of working and way we are organizing our work. So most of the time, the problem with this can be that, for example, we have defined our backlog items or the features we are developing in a way that people outside of the development organization don't understand what they are or what they mean, which makes then discussing about the priorities and the progress of these rather difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree, Panu, that it's not only the tooling, but it's also the ways of working, what kind of practices we have. And we cannot just fix one of those. It doesn't, and many of these we are seeing the same way, that it's really hard to try to fix only the tool or only the process, because they are really going like hands in hand.
Yeah, I think another one which would be somewhat similar is the fourth one, which is saying that we don't have a shared vision of this product. And I think it's kind of the opposite of the previous one. If the previous was that us in R&D are doing things or writing down things in a way that outside of the development, it's hard to understand what we are doing. I think this is kind of the same the other way around, that on the high level of designing the product, we have a vision of what needs to be done and where the product is going to go, but we cannot share it effectively to the development side, and they don't necessarily see that which part of the strategy for the product we are currently doing and how it's going to impact the market overall.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something, once again, that we need to have both. We need to have good tool where we manage those, that it's like transparent and easy to access, but it's not enough that it's put in some like really good tool if you don't really collaborate and inform and basically push also the information to everybody that you can actually find from here. see what it actually means for us and so on. Yeah, and a little bit same with this strategic goals. I would say it's the same thing.
Yeah,
and something about the silos as well. So it's really often what we have seen that teams are really working in silos, and once again, this is something that we need to understand the overall process, how we are doing, what kind of products or services we are developing, and then how the tool could also help to basically break the silos, get the visibility, creating the correct setup to your tool that it's enough flexible that we can break those silos easily.
Yeah,
it's coming to the configuration itself. Might be the workflows, might be the project structure in Jira and something like that. So really something that need to be considered quite carefully as well.
Yeah, it even might be the permissions that I'm not allowed to see what the other team is doing in some organizations. So exactly. There can be multiple problems with this area, even related to the tools, and of course also largely to the organization. We might, for example, have competence silos that our team only does development with Java, and then when something is done with Python, we are completely clueless of what's going on, and we have no information about that, and we cannot help do that either.
Yeah. And once again, generally, when we have this kind of like a competence problems that some people can do only something, quite often, then we go with the backlogs once again, how we are splitting our work. It goes that we are actually trying to split the work to those competence areas, even we shouldn't do that. We should actually change our organization and really like train those different teams to learn different skills as well. And I think this goes even worse when we are trying to adopt like a new frameworks. The SAFe is good. We have seen that SAFe is really good to something, or it's at least it advertised very, very, very nicely. So we are trying to adopt the SAFe, and then we are not actually doing the things what should be done, like reorganize our organization, how we are set up in our teams, what is the ways of working, and so on. So it's really like it gives, I would say, even more problems that we are adopting something that we don't, if we are not doing the base, so change the organization as well, because it might create actually more silos. And then we are trying to adopt the tools as well, and it doesn't fit. It's like, it's kind of mess.
Maybe we move on to the next slides here, explaining the Atlassian tooling in a bit more detail.
Yeah, sure.
So when we discuss about Atlassian tools, today we will focus on 2 out of 3. The 3 tools that Atlassian is creating for development organizations is Confluence, which is mostly used for information sharing, then Jira, where we are managing our work and the teamwork and effort, where we have the team backlogs and we manage the tasks and value creation that we are doing. And then the tool on the right-hand side, which we create out for today's presentation, is Bitbucket, which is source code version control tool that most of the companies who are using the Atlassian stack are using as well. If you would be using GitHub or GitLab, you could simply replace Bitbucket with that and it will still do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
If we look at Confluence in detail, we can see that in Confluence, we have highlighted what typically goes into Confluence and how that information is often structured. We have business cases or portfolio planning, if we want to call it that. So high-level ideas of what we need to do. And this could be the future portfolio that we are planning, which features we will be providing in our product or solution in the time frame of half a year or 2 years or something like that. Also in Confluence, we typically have guidelines. They are describing how we work in our organization. They could be things like coding convention or architecture guideline or guideline for what kind of cloud services and solutions we are building or something else like that.
Yeah.
Then finally, we have 2 spaces which are discussing then the information related to the product itself. And all organizations don't divide the information like this, even though I would strongly recommend it, so that we have the development information separately. That would be information used by the developers and development team and people related to the development and any information related to that. And then we have separately the product documentation or product information, which is then discussing and documenting the product that we have created. And quite often it is that when I'm creating something as a developer, I might need quite a lot of information for doing that. The necessary part of that for the users of the product or for maintenance of the product or keeping the product running might be, I don't know, 10% of that information, 1% of that information that we need for developing it. So overall, it's a much smaller subset of the whole information.
Mm.
In Jira, then we would have the backlogs for the teams and the planning of what we're going to do now in the near future, probably talking about scope of less than half a year typically, at least when it goes to any further details. And also in Jira, we take care of what's currently going on, what I should be doing as a developer. And in this picture here, we have highlighted also test management tooling, for example, X-Ray, which we will be using as a reference in our webinars overall.
Yeah, so this X-Ray it's like an add-on top of the Jira. So you have, of course, different kind of add-ons, but we are trying to keep this webinar and this concept really like out of the box. So like vanilla system, of course, and you can really do really good setup, even this basics with Confluence and Jira. But then we know that people need or would like to have some kind of visualization, some kind of extra functionalities, and then normally you need to take some add-ons top of Confluence or Jira. So, but we are not covering those because otherwise it will be a huge amount of information. Yeah. Something else on this?
Maybe we go ahead.
Yeah.
So the next topic that we thought to discuss is the structure of backlog items we want to utilize with Jira or Atlassian tools overall. This pretty much would apply to any, regardless of the tool, to any organization. And what this picture is trying to tell us is that on the top level, we have items called initiatives, and each initiative can have several epics underneath it. And those can again be divided into smaller bits and pieces called stories or tasks or something else, etc. So they form up a structure. And the initiative on the top level is what I mentioned that could be managed, for example, in Confluence, the business case of why we are doing something, or information about the high-level functionality or feature for our product that we are building up. Quite often it is that these might not be managed by the development teams. It's more that it's related to portfolio management or product management or company management overall. In traditional world, I think the initiatives actually would be very close to projects. So we would be saying that, hey, let's fund this project and find people to do it for us. Let's build this kind of a product or feature for our product family.
Yeah.
Then if we start looking at the epic is a small functional piece of the initiative. So we could think that if the initiative is some big functionality, the epic is a subset of that functionality. And the idea with the epic is that it's something we can deliver within a reasonable time frame. Maybe it's something we can also release and make available for our customers, even though we haven't yet implemented the whole initiative. And that's really the idea with the epic, that it's something we can plan and we can give a time frame that epic number 1 is going to be ready here, epic number 2 is going to come there, epic number 3 is going to come there. And then we can see that at that stage, our initiative might be already done, or maybe we then figure out during the implementation and having these in production and having customer feedback from these epics that maybe we actually want to create a 4th and 5th epic as well, because they will be good investments for us.
Yeah. And this, why we are introducing this structure here now, it's that because those typical pain points was also the visibility. So when we have this kind of structure created, to the organization. They know what is initiative, they know where we can find those, then we know what we have, when we have epics, what it actually means for that organization, and we can actually see the overall status where we are going, so the progress, like Panu was mentioning.
Yeah. Then when we continue down to the smaller pieces, we can see that there we have actually 3 different kind of items on the same level. Probably the most important one of them is called a story, and story or user story is just, again, a smaller functional piece of the whole thing. It's actually a really small piece, one part of the epic that we need. And typically one user story would be something that a development team can implement within a few days or maximum a couple of weeks. One thing to note about the user stories, and kind of an anti-pattern that we have seen often, a story can almost never be completed by just one member of the team. So it's always a team effort. It might include work related to designing the usability, designing the UX of the whole thing, user experience of it. It might require different kind of development work, coding for the front end, coding for the back end, some changes to the underlying IT structure, the servers, etc. And probably some testing is involved, etc., etc. Point being, the story is a team effort. It's not something that only one person can do.
Yeah. And yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to say that then the difference between a story and a task is that the story would provide some real functionality. So it's something we can describe as, this is how our product will change. This is what the user will see. This is what the user will get. So that's the way how we can define a story. And then a task is something that actually doesn't provide visible changes into the product. The task is still something that we want to manage, that we actually do in the team. So it could be, for example, that we are installing some IT infrastructure for a software product that we will be utilizing and creating later. Or it could be something as simple as we are moving to a different building with our team, and we have to reserve some time for putting our stuff into boxes and going to the other building. Then finally, we have bugs, and I think they are quite self-explaining. Errors that we have found from our solution, and we want to track that we will actually fix those findings and take the fixes to production. Then the final level on the hierarchy is called subtasks in Jira. And the idea with subtask is that, as I mentioned with the story, it's divided into different competencies or different things that we need to do to enable to fully implement the story. And the subtasks are exactly for that purpose. So there could be one for doing the UX and design work, one for doing implementation for some part of the product, another subtask for doing something else, one for testing, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, and this is something that we have seen quite often, that companies are struggling with this, that they actually are dividing those stories already in the individual level. So then we have bunch of backlog items. We don't have like a tens or hundreds. We have like thousands, and they are just like individuals, and it's really difficult to see the progress where we are going overall. So that's why we are and at the same time, what the organization have wanted is kind of the agile ways of working. So once again, we are adopting some practicalities. So we would like to go with the agile, but at the same time, we are not kind of chasing our habits. So we are still focusing that we have the competence area. So we are not thinking the organization or the team structure, how we should define those. So yeah. Something else about this. This basically, the basic setup about the Epic over here is how also Jira is implemented. So the Jira Epics are kind of special issue types that can be used, and they have kind of built-in functionality to create these stories or tasks inside of it. So then all the metrics, all the reports, what we have in the Jira are actually they already have reports for Epic burn down and so on. So that's why you should use the issue types, how it's designed, that you don't actually, otherwise you might lack some reports and some progress metrics because you are doing some funny things there.
Exactly. In the end, you end up fighting the tool because you are using it in a way that the tool provider didn't think that you will be using it. And that's something you, of course, want to avoid.
Yeah.
Maybe we go to the next topic again.
Yeah.
It is the demo.
Exactly.
I think I will take over the sharing, Timo, from you. So
yeah,
I'll
sure.
start sharing from here, and then I'll show a few things from the tool itself.
Yeah. And small reminder, if you have any questions, just put those in the QA chat and we will answer those end of the webinar.
Yeah. So what I have currently open here is Confluence, and I've created a demo setup of Confluence environment. And as always in Confluence, on the left-hand side, we have a structure of pages. I have created a main page called initiatives or business requirements. And the idea how we would work with Confluence when we are managing our portfolio or development portfolio there is so that we create typically one Confluence subpage per development item or one of those initiatives that we have. And in my case, I've created examples so that let's play that we are actually a bank and we are developing our web services. It's a good example in a way that I think everybody has been using web banks and bank applications for ages. So they are quite a common ground for all people. And if we start looking deeper into these, we can see that we have few of these initiatives at the moment, relatively small number. The idea with the initiatives, of course, being that we try to analyze whether something is worthwhile doing, and we consider that, well, if it's not worthwhile doing, then let's not keep it on the list of things to do, or in our portfolio, we maybe have rejected it, thrown it somewhere else. And we only want to keep active those ones which we actually will be doing. If we then start looking into one of these initiatives in more detail, so if I dive into the digitalization of housing loans and their management, then let's start looking at that in a bit more detail. Before I do that, just shortly, I have created a table here which is showing each of the initiatives and their current status, the planned schedule for each one of them, and also the owner information. When I open one of these for viewing, we can see that there's quite a lot of information written about this particular topic. And a good practice that we would always recommend is that you have a template for creating new initiatives, and they highlight that this is the information you want to put in here. And for example, we can see that on this particular initiative or on the template, we have had initiative description, which asks that for whom are we providing functionality, why are we doing that, what it actually is doing, what is it going to provide us, and how is it differentiating us from the competition in the market. So quite a typical template to use for any new bigger functionalities that we are doing. And then we have separately business cases, how the design will be. We could discuss the architectural impact, for example, of our solution on this part here. So we have a lot of information available on the initiative in question. And this would be a place where we would actually be discussing the whole initiative before we even decide that, are we going to do this or not? We could, for example, be discussing the business case overall, that how much extra revenue or recurring revenue or possibly profit are we going to make out of this? How much is it going to cost us to actually create it? We can give some preliminary estimates about the sizing, etc. See how it links to our existing offering in the company.
Yeah. And it's really easy then having kind of the sub pages as well, where we can have different kind of canvases, like what Panu was mentioning, that we need to discuss that, is it really something that we need to do, or is benefit for us? So it might be that we have those sub pages underneath, that we have more information and calculation or whatever is needed, that we can actually do the good decision.
Yeah, and also it's an easy place for adding more business related information. For example, here I have added some calculation rules when we are managing housing loans in the bank, that if person X applies for housing loan from us, how do we check that that person actually can pay the loan back to us, or what sort of calculation rules we have in place there. And it's an easy place for the business to discuss things and collect information here. Main reason for doing this in Confluence is that Confluence is an easy system for everybody to use. It's easy to manage, it's easy to document things there. If you can use Word, you can use Confluence. It's just that Confluence is more visible, more available, and in that sense, it's same as Wikipedia. You can always find it, and it's easier to find information from there instead of going into dozens and dozens of Word documents and trying to guess which one is the one that you actually want to look at.
Exactly.
Then if I look further into the initiative that we had, when we use Confluence together with Jira, now I'm looking at an initiative which actually is already in progress. So we are doing some development work for this particular initiative. Then we can see that, okay, there's few epics in Jira which are the implementation of this particular initiative. So we actually see the second layer in our structure that we looked at earlier. And these are the epics in Jira, which we can then see that what's going on with each one, when have they been planned to be ready, etc., etc. And if I now want to go and look at some of these in Jira, then I can simply click on the link on the web page, on Confluence here, and it takes me directly to Jira to look at this particular epic, for example.
Yeah.
Anything that comes to your mind, Timo, regarding this before I jump actually into Jira to look at this same topic there?
Not now. I think we will cover this. We will have different parts, like webinar sessions, more about the Confluence. We will go more through these templates, what Panu was already mentioning, how this is working and so on. So this is really like a walkthrough today. So let's go forward.
Yeah. Then I'll jump to I could click on the link here. It actually opens me the same page I have opened there on another tab. I can prove it to you by clicking on it. So it takes me to this particular epic in Jira. How do I know it's an epic? Well, Jira has this funny little icon there, which is telling me that you are currently looking at an epic. And in this case, my initiative was about digitalizing housing loan management overall. And the first epic that we have created for this is that the customers can apply for a housing loan online. So probably our bank web page would have a link that allows me to click on it and start creating an application for housing loan, maybe defining who I am, how the family income is, what kind of a property we are planning on buying, and how much loan we would want to have for that, etc., etc. Information which is necessary for us as a bank to understand that can we actually permit this customer to have the loan, and what kind of an interest rate we might be giving for the customer, etc. When I'm looking at the epic in Jira, I can immediately see the status for it on the right-hand side here. Besides that, I can also see overall status of the child issues for my epic. So inside my epic, I have here actually a list of tasks and user stories, which are the implementation for this particular epic. And I can see that, okay, currently it looks like the epic is being developed. 27% of it is apparently done, which would translate into 3 out of 11 known issues at the moment. One of them is currently ongoing, and then we have quite a few which haven't been started yet. Of course, we can also quickly realize that this progress bar actually works so that it's looking at the current information. Currently, I have 11 issues underneath this epic. Maybe in the future we create 4 more, which would then mean that, well, we are not so close to being done yet. But that's of course how it should work as well.
Yeah, this is really important to understand that when, of course, once again, depending your methodologies, if you are more waterfall way of doing, then probably you know or you are trying to know everything beforehand. But when we are in Agile, it's definitely something that we don't need to know everything beforehand. It might be, that's why we have the initiative layer, that we know that, okay, what is the benefit and what kind of functionalities we might need, and we can really adjust that and tune it.
Yeah, I liked your wording that we think or we try to know what's going to happen beforehand in waterfall model. And I think that's the main reason why nobody's using it anymore, because we never do. Nobody can plan so well that they know everything that needs to be done to realize a product, which is going to happen in half a year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was mentioning that we have this epic board also here, that when we have like a multiple epic, when we have the initiative layer and we are creating those new epics, so it's really easy to create like our own boards as well for the epics. So seeing like overall status where we are. Yeah.
If we want to look at the epics and see that which epics are we currently working on, which have we already done, what's waiting for us to do them, then we can see that we can create different kinds of use for it. This could be one of the useful ones, where we can, for example, now see that I have actually 2 epics currently in progress, one related to applying for the housing loan online, another one related to having online meetings between the customers and the bank personnel. So we can easily see that, okay, we have a couple of things ongoing. Maybe it is so that we have 2 teams that are working in our organization. I would kind of almost hope that that would be the case. Otherwise, I would have asked that, why are we doing 2 things at the same time? Wouldn't it be simpler just to do one first and then the other after?
Exactly.
Then if we go to look at things a bit more from the team perspective, if we now looked at the epic and the higher level of things, what's going to happen within a few months? We can see that I have actually assigned releases for my epics. So this one is saying that it should be ready by Q1 2020, at the end of Q1 2023. And I might have later releases on some of the other items, but in this example, I don't. But if we go to look at things a bit more from the team perspective, that what's happening on a weekly basis, so what's happening inside the team, I'll go to a different board in Jira, and this is now showing me what this team is currently exactly right now doing. It's the ongoing sprint. Sprints typically being 2 weeks iterations of how we develop software. Before diving into this, I'll go into the backlog and show a few things from there. So this would be a team backlog. It contains the items we mentioned, which is the 3rd layer in our original picture: stories, tasks, and bugs. So the actual items that the team should be collaborating on, and the smaller work that maybe is not so interesting for the business because these start to be relatively detailed. Some of these might be hugely interesting for the business in case that there's, for example, something that the customers complained about and the business and marketing sales wants to inform that to our customers that, hey, look, we fixed this. Nevertheless, this is where the team is working at and seeing their work items, what to do here. And if we start looking into this, we can see that currently I have here 1 sprint, 1 iteration of 2 weeks of work, and we have planned that during that iteration, we will enable the creation of loan application with basic information. We have some tasks related to having the environment for this available. Another story about validating the personal data so that we know that the customer is who they say they are, and then a bug fix for a problem related to something with the credit cards. When we look down this list further, we can see that there are actually further sprints that the team has planned. If this would be sprint we are currently doing, this current 2-week iteration where we are working at, then the team has already planned for the future. An iteration they are starting a bit later, having some information in there that what they plan to do, which things they are planning to implement and create there. And they even have created a 3rd one, which only has 1 thing in it. Maybe they are deciding later that what are they going to put into this sprint. Besides this, the team has a backlog of items, which is work that we have not yet planned into any sprint in our team, and where all the new things that we realize that we have to do, or new user stories, new bugs will go to, and out of which we then fill our sprints with work. So we take items from the backlog and take it into our sprints for actually realizing the work mentioned in those items.
Yeah, and this is really handy when we have this backlog visibility also over here. So because we should have the product owner, the someone who is actually responsible for the backlog and those items that we have. So this is really easy basically to rank the backlog, because it should be order should be so that what is the top of the list is the most important one. So how Jira is working, you can actually drag and drop those items in the backlog to say that, okay, this arranged training is actually the most important thing. So if we are running out from in those sprints, you can actually take the next one already. And also when we are planning the next sprints, it's really easy then check that can we do this and this and this item from the backlog, and then we are not wasting too much time for discussing what is the most important thing.
Yeah. One thing.
I will mention one more. So these also create the overall visibility that we are saying that it's kind of one of the pain points as well. So when we have that list in the priority order, we can actually see this. It gives the visibility to everybody else as well. Yeah, sorry, Panu.
Yeah, I was about to continue that. One thing we see with this example team here, that the backlog is relatively short. We only have 4 items there. Probably as we work on these items here, we might realize that there's few more things we want to do for the application of housing loan online, and we would probably create new user stories or tasks based on that. Besides that, of course, eventually we will start planning work for the epics that we will do later on in the future, and again fill our backlog with that information. Again, an anti-pattern that we see in many organizations is that these backlogs tend to be really long. I would say 200 items is not really an exception at all. We've seen longer than that. Yeah. Problem with those really long backlogs is that when exactly are you planning to do the item number 199 from the list? How about item number 89 even? So there's really no value in planning the work beforehand much into the future, and it just costs us, because then we are looking at a really long backlog. We are trying to order things in that backlog into the correct order of priority, and we are having a lot of discussions about all the items in the backlog. A much easier and much more efficient way for teams to work is that try to keep the backlog relatively simple. Maybe the current one we have on the screen here is a bit of an oversimplification really, but I would still expect that the backlog is not much more than maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 items. And I think that would be a reasonable backlog for a team.
Yeah, definitely. And also the kind of anti-pattern now, what we were already mentioning that the user story should be something that is team effort. So what we have seen and what is quite often happening, that actually the backlog items are individual. So that's why also the backlog is growing, and actually then the items what we have there is now for some competencies that needs to be done, and it makes really hard to actually read the backlog. And yeah, how Panu has actually creating this setup, if you open the active sprints a bit, so there we have only like 15 of those items over here in this sprint, only 4, but if you go to the sprint view, you can actually see that we have the subtasks underneath. So the team has then break down those items, like here. It's already they have break down the actual items, the smaller pieces. So we don't see those in the backlog because we need to do those during the sprint itself when we are implementing the actual story.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it more easy for us as a team to communicate between ourselves and obviously also outside of our team. When we say that, okay, we are now discussing about creating the loan application with very basic information, and then it has a list of smaller tasks that us as individuals in the team will need to do and implement, so that the whole thing actually is working and can be utilized.
Yeah. And this makes, once again, the transparency and the visualization and visibility easier when we have those items which are perhaps interested by the business people as well. They are not interested about the agree message format or create stub services, something like that.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I'll quickly show one more thing before we go to the Q&A. I thought that I'll very shortly show that, well, how does the whole testing and X-ray come into picture, and just to show that here I have an old epic which has been already implemented. It's in done status. If it had some stories attached to it, they would be visible here in done status. I intentionally don't have them so that it's easier just to demonstrate this. But I do have some linked issues here which are saying that this epic is being tested by, and then I have a list of test cases. So this is telling that these 4 test cases are actually testing the functionality in this particular epic. And if I want to see further into the testing status of it, I can actually see that out of these 4 tests in the context that I'm interested in, 2 of the tests have been run, and a couple of them are still waiting for somebody to run those tests.
Yeah, and this is something that, of course, you can kind of have, you can create on issue type like a test case if you want, and just link to a similar way like here. But when you are using some kind of extensions, plugins, like here we have this X-ray, it actually gives really much more functionalities behind of the issue type, behind of the different things what you can do over here. You can see that what is the latest status, is it not run, is it actually passed or not. So definitely we recommend that you take these kind of add-ons top of the Jira as well, because it makes the life much easier and more efficient. Yeah. It's not such a hassle if you're just trying to use the vanilla eyes for this testing.
We'll spend more time in other webinars talking about the testing, just to highlight that when I open one of the test cases, it actually looks exactly like a normal Jira issue. So anybody using Jira on daily basis would immediately know that, yeah, it's a Jira issue. It just happens to be of a separate type called X-ray test. And that's what I'm currently looking at. And okay, but otherwise it's a Jira issue. I would work with it like anything else. It has a status. I can write some text on it. I can leave some comments on it, etc., etc.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe one more, if you go back to this, your project, this one, and if you can even show it from here. Now, when we were mentioning this visualization as well, and I just want to mention that when we are in the cloud, we actually have this roadmap as well. So it's a really basic functionality what we can see and visualize our things. So this is working inside one project, and in this example, when we have this epics created in the same project, so we can actually see kind of the timelines here as well. We can see what stories or tasks we have inside of the epic. But it's kind of a really simplified way, but it might be something that you can at least start with if you need this kind of view. So just let you know that there's a bunch of different kind of functionalities inside of Jira, and of course now depending which area are you on premise or in cloud instance, so there is some differences as well, but quite handy.
Yeah. Then I think we are almost ready to go back to the Q&A session. I'll just take us back to Confluence, to where we started from. So we quickly looked at that. In our initiatives page, we had listed the currently active initiatives, where we had, for example, the one for digitalizing our housing loans business or management of housing loans. And when we looked at that in more detail, then we could see that what's the implementation of this particular initiative in Jira. And we can see a list of those epics which are implementing this initiative. And when we went further into Jira, we can again see on the epic what's the actual realization of this epic. What is the team doing to achieve the value we have defined in this epic? One last thing I'll mention is just shortly that the epic is not something that must be specific to a team. It could be that if we have a lot of developers, we maybe have multiple development teams. It could just as well be that we have several teams working on the same epic at some stage of its lifetime.
Yeah, and actually in this view, you can see that there is actually one task, this ASD 177, what is the last item over there. It's in different Jira projects. So that, like Panu was mentioning, it can be something that multiple teams are working with the same feature, or I mean, same Jira epic. I was coming to those questions that there's already asked. So yeah, you can, multiple team can work with the same Jira epic, definitely. All
Maybe
right.
we go to the questions since we already started discussing about them.
Yeah. So the first one was the kind of safe related. Why cannot we use feature? Now it depends a bit. I mean, because Safe has this epic feature, story, and task hierarchy. So why we cannot use that one? We have its possibility. If you are on premises, there is actually plugin that can transfer those names. It's a legacy because the Jira Epic is something, it's really legacy object. So that's why it's normally used just Epic. There's Epic panel, there's Epic link, and so on and so on. But there's actually created plugins that you can translate the names to be featured. So then you can actually create this kind of safe hierarchy. Also in cloud, I don't promise, but I think it was this year already they will launch that you can actually out of the box you can do renaming those. So that's quite good for that one. Then another question about the backlog size. So the long backlogs are bad, but how to handle ideas and the request that I don't want to completely discard. So
yeah, I can start with that. I can of course understand that we come up with a brilliant idea and we kind of would like to put it on the side and come back to it at some stage. Then the question is that how much implementation effort wise, or maybe even more importantly, how big is the impact of this idea that we do on the overall market? Like, what's the return of value? How much money is it going to make us, or how much extra work is it going to save us from? What's the impact of that? And based on how big the impact is, we want to make the decision on the correct level of the hierarchy that we have in Jira or in our organization, because probably we have different people looking at the initiative level than looking at the team backlog, obviously. Yeah. And first thing is, okay, let's take it to the correct level for decision making. And then the idea is, then I would still say that how long do we want to keep the backlog? Like, how valuable is the idea for us really? And is it so unique that we will completely forget about it if we now put it on the side and maybe reject it? Of course, we could have a status called postponed for our ideas, where we can put items that we might come back to this after half a year or 2 years. In those cases, it's reasonable to put it in the postponed status, but also consider that if it stays in that postponed status, let's say for 3 years, and we never ever have time to do that, and there's always 5 more important things to do for us, is it really worthwhile keeping it alive? Are we never ever going to get back to it? Unfortunate, but that's also how it is. Maybe it's actually fortunate that we have something more valuable to do.
Yeah. So, and also it once again, depending what kind of ideas or request we are managing, like Panu was mentioning, trying to figure out the level as well. So if we are now in the if we are thinking this opportunity portfolio, it's like I would say that it should be probably normally perhaps in the Confluence, because we need to create the content as well. But if using Jira, probably different project or a different issue type, that this is idea, or this is some kind of opportunity, or this is a request, that we are not mixing those to the actual stories, and that's what we need to do. Because then once again, what we can do, we can filter out the backlog to that relevant information that we are now handling, perhaps a couple of months, half a year, not those ideas that are wishful thinking that we would like to do, and we don't have any time to actually do those. So we need to have some kind of mechanism. And once again, it's not only the tooling, it's the process itself. Before we are saying that this is in our backlog, we should have some kind of definition ready. Did we get some kind of business case analysis, this and so on and so on. So I'm not sure, did I answer, or did we answer your question? But yeah, we recommend that really thinking through that when we are managing this project or product backlog, it should be only those items that we are really going to do. And if it's something that, like Panu was mentioned, we are prioritizing often everything that is more important than something that we have in the backlog, just remove it, just delete it. And if it's really important, it will come back in some phase.
Yeah.
Because I remember was that in our slide that we have the pain points, but it's something that the backlog management in generally, that when we have too much information there, it's really like it's hard to then do the prioritization as well. We are discussing some items that we are always saying that, hey, this is not important let's do something else.
Are we okay with marking the question as done? I'd like to propose that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and about the Confluence, yeah, we will like trying to mention, we will have another webinars, and we are focusing more the Confluence part, what actually Panu is sharing now. So how we have set up this kind of Confluence where we are actually going through the initiatives, and then also the third one, like focusing more the Jira, those epics, how we are handling those, the boards and so on, and of course the testing part of it as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Good. Then are we done?
I think we are done. Thank you, everybody.